All right, we'll call the regular hospital board of directors meeting of Tuesday, September 24th to order. We're starting at about 5:32. The land acknowledgement done by council.
Yes, thank you. Gunas Chush to the Tlingit, Haida, and Tsimshian people. We respectfully acknowledge them as the original inhabitants of Southeast Alaska. Bartlett Regional Hospital is located on the homeland of the Occoquan. We are grateful to provide services in your ancestral homeland and to be part of this community.
Thank you, Hal. So we are light on board members, a couple that aren't here. Sharon, can you go ahead and call the roll?
Sure. Kenny Solomon Gross. Deb Johnson. Shelley Deering.
Here.
Lindy Jones.
Present.
Hal Geiger.
Present.
Lisa Peterson. Present. John Raster.
Here.
Max Marks. Dr. Alex Malter.
I'm here for it.
Yeah. And Wade Brightson.
Present.
We have a new format, so I'm just trying to. If we're gonna ask for approval of the agenda, any agenda changes today?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I don't know if this should go under old business or new business, but I would like to have a discussion of resolution 5-24 as it relates to the closure of Rainforest Recovery Center today.
Okay, just hold on 1 second, okay, because I think I have a spot where we're gonna put that in. And I'm just getting used to this new format, so just give me 1 second. Right after the consent agenda, there is a memo from Ian. I didn't know to tell you what page it's on, but it's here. And it talks about Rainforest Recovery Center, and I think that would be an excellent time to put that in here, so I think it's already baked into the agenda, Dr. Jones.
Mr. Chair, I've just received the board package. I have not received that memo, so I don't know where that's at, where it's came from. So
The memo's been in here since September 20th, because I read it when I read the package. You want to take a minute to read it? It's in your packet. It's just kind of, it's a little
What
bit.
page is it on the packet, please?
Tell me. Right after the financials.
Yeah, so what page, Kenny or Sharon? I'm kind of stuck. I'm sorry, I'm not there and present. I'm stuck on a computer here, so I need some help here, so a little bit. So what page would that be?
New formula, so I'm having problems finding a number 2 here, Dr. Jones, so hold on here.
And, frankly, I think that this is either an old business topic or a new business topic. So I would move that we put it either to old business because it was an old resolution we made, or new business because it's a new issue that we have. But I really do want to know that page so I can check that out.
Well, you can, I'm calling over here. Looks like it's gonna be on page 25.
25, okay. So
Okay.
I would move that we put this to not the consent agenda, it's old business or new business. So whatever you would like there.
So, I'm going to, it's gonna be right after the consent agenda, where we get a hospital update from Kim. We'll go right into that. It's gonna be old business A.
So it'll be under an old business then, is that correct?
Correct, old business A.
Thank you. And I'll look at page 25.
Another thing that I hope we have a place for in the agenda is we received some correspondence from somebody outside the hospital asking about our ophthalmology.
And if that's okay with everybody, I'd like to just put that right into old business too, because I think ophthalmology is something we talked about a lot too. Unless you want that put in the new business.
No, that's fine.
So Ian will do that into old business. So we'll talk about the resolution on rainforest recovery. In A, and then we'll talk about ophthalmology.
Yeah, so my thing was not a resolution on rainforest recovery, it's on resolution 5-2024.
So the resolution, we'll get there, we'll talk about it, then we'll give you time to chat then. Okay, so with these two changes, with just actually not really changes, because it's already baked into the agenda for rainforest recovery speaking, and we're adding in an update on ophthalmology. I know that Shelley had reached out to me also to talk about dermatology as well too, and I've actually been on these two things, so we'll have that on there too. So about ophthalmology, dermatology, and rainforest recovery.
Mr. Chairman, then I would move that we adopt the modified agenda.
Thank you. Seconds?
Yes, I second.
All right. Okay. With that, I have one person on my sheet for public participation. Tina Pleasant, you may come up here and. So Tina, just state your name, who you work, what you do, and. We'll give you 3 minutes to. See.
I'm Tina Pleasance. I'm an advanced registered nurse practitioner. I work for the behavioral health department. I was the admitting and attending provider at Rainforest Recovery Center, and I work throughout the behavioral department. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and read a letter that I wrote to you guys. So thank you. As an admitting and attending provider at Rainforest Recovery Center with experience stabilizing and working with complex patients struggling with drug and addiction, alcohol addiction, I can attest that the closure of Rainforest Recovery Center is nothing less than a devastating assault on the health of the Juneau community. Although Rainforest Recovery Center delivered high-intensity 3-point level 5 treatment of patients throughout the entire state, the patients who are going to suffer the most are local patients. Referencing a letter published in the Juneau Empire by Dr. Lydia Jones on September 23rd, 2024, I strongly agree that it would be dangerous and medically irresponsible to refer our local individuals requiring high-intensity services to a lower level of care. Many of the local patients served at Rainforest Recovery Center are medically complex and are at serious risk for life-threatening complications without the expertise and licensed staff to safely care for these individuals. Rainforest Recovery Center went through a very rigorous screening process for out-of-town patients to ensure that they were medically stabilized in a hospital or a 4.0 level care setting before acceptance at Rainforest Recovery Center. For our local patients, Rainforest collaborated with Bartlett's emergency department and hospice service to screen, stabilize, and transfer patients into RRC residential services, where many of those patients continued to require higher than what other 3.5 level programs in the state were able to accommodate. Closing Rainforest Recovery Center's 3.5 level program before building a bridge for our most vulnerable and underserved local patients safely transition to the 3.1 level care is an egregious move that deserves closer attention to how we transition care safely and effectively to other organizations outside of Bartlett. Sending a provider from Bartlett to Gatineau Human Services and using, quote, newer withdrawal management drugs, unquote, without the staff, licensing, structure, and expertise of a 3-point level 5 program is a reckless offer that will not suffice for the premature closure of Rainforest Recovery Center. Staffing at Rainforest Recovery was an issue, but there are still core staff employed at Rainforest who are willing to run the program. And we are still here, and we are still employees of the hospital. The staffing challenges are no different than any other department. Yes, there were resignations, but the majority of them happened when Rainforest was overstaffed. Furthermore, there were critical financial losses at Rainforest that could have been corrected by fixing the error billing mechanisms that were in place. Something that was in process while we were closing the program. Sustainability at Rainforest Recovery Center is achievable, even if it's only reopened with a revised structure and limited timeline to allow other organizations in the community to safely develop 3.5 level services outside of Bartlett Regional Hospital. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms.
Hey,
Fuzzy.
Kenny?
Yes, Dr. Jones.
I would like to ask Tina, you know, she is basically our residential addiction expert on addiction medicine, and she knows the Rainforest Recovery, and I would like to ask her a couple questions if that would be okay.
Absolutely.
So the first question, Tina, you know, where us in the clinical medicine field are concerned about the planning that was done for how we're going to care for patients with 3.5 level plus needs without that program. I was wondering, were you consulted on kind of how that was all going to work, or how did that all happen from your point of view?
I am not sure how that all happened because I was never consulted or asked a single question about any plans moving forward or any transition process.
All right, thanks. And Tina, I had one other question. This is, you know, as you know, we're kind of what I see as our road to financial stability is that we become a critical access hospital, which requires that we have only 25 inpatient beds. So I know you do a lot of screening of patients upstairs on the medical and on the psych floor, as far as with the ISAM screening. And so I'm kind of wondering, what are you going to tell the providers, doctors mostly, who are taking care of these patients? What are you going to tell the patients and their family when you do this ASAM thing, what to do with that patient? So, you know, one, what are you going to tell the doctors to do? And two, what are you going to tell the patients and their family?
That is something in process. I mean, there's not really much that we can tell them to do other than, you know, other than work on getting the patient to the level of care that they can get into, which typically what is happening now even is patients are coming into the hospital, they're being admitted to the mental health unit or the medical surgical unit, they're being detoxed. And if we're lucky, we're able to screen them and assess them and have them fill out applications for programs in Anchorage or other places in the state. And then we have to discharge them where they relapse and their increased risk of death skyrockets. We have nothing
So,
to offer them other than that. And that is, yeah, sorry.
so the patients that we had in Rainforest Recovery, just recently, they all had safe discharges, correct?
They went to crisis housing while they were waiting for beds.
So they did, our case managers work with them.
Our case management, we have an excellent case management individual team, actually. And yes, we were able to coordinate a safe housing, safe sheltered discharge plan. Yes.
Any other pleasant questions for Dr. Astor?
Thank you for everything you do, and it's nice to hear this perspective because, we heard a perspective that the transition was probably going to go smoothly, which clearly that has not happened. And so that is just a great perspective for us to hear so that we can hopefully help mitigate some of these problems because this is a huge problem. We heard testimony after testimony after testimony. It's a huge problem. So it's incumbent upon us.
Can you explain what the huge problem?
So it's a huge problem in the community. Addictions, care for our underserved population.
Any other questions? Tina, again, I want to just reiterate Dr. Astor's comments and thank you very much for all of you. I appreciate you over all the years. I know you haven't met me before, but I've seen your name a ton of times and really appreciate all the work you've done for continue to do so. Thank you.
And Tina, sorry, Mr. Chair, I just want to say thank you, Tina. And Thursday, just so everyone knows, Tina and I are going to be meeting with the mayor and a task force to figure out how we can responsibly deal with this issue in a way that ensures that patient safety is and well-being is in the best that we really look out for that. So thank you, Tina.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Dr. Jones, under what authority are you doing that?
What's that?
What authority? Are you the CEO? Are you the medical director of that?
So I don't know, I was asked by the mayor to be involved in this thing. So I don't know, maybe we could ask the mayor. So she asked me to be involved in this. So
That's
I
nice.
don't know.
Who
I
do
mean,
you
when the mayor
represent?
asked me to do something,
Who do you represent, doctor?
well, I
You have no
represent
you have no administrative authority here.
no, I don't represent an administrative authority. I represent a
Just want to
physician.
make sure I understand your authority
So,
levels.
excuse me, I'm trying to tell you this. I represent a concerned citizen, a longtime practitioner in this community who's worried about the health and well-being of this group of patients. I don't represent anything else than that.
You also represented the board when we made this decision.
Well, this is not a decision we made,
Yes, you did.
Mr. Warden.
you did.
If you read resolution
You
524,
did. I wrote it actually.
well, this is not a decision that we made, and this is not the way we said we're going to make this decision. And it's very
So
clear to me.
So let's stop this right now. And
No, I don't have any authority from the board. I don't have any authority from anyone else. I was invited by the mayor. Maybe you could tell them, if you don't want me to be involved, you could talk to the mayor about saying, I can't be involved.
Dr. Jones, and we'll table this till we get to that part of the discussion. So let's see if you have any more public comment. Thank you, Ms. Pleasant.
Thank you.
Do you have any more public comment? Is there anybody online that has any public comment would like to speak? Yes. And I'm sorry, Dr. Rosenfeld.
I did want to take off my hat as the step-in chief of staff and do a public comment as the associate medical director of Skagway. I just wanted to thank the Bartlett employees that came and helped us during the mass casualty event that occurred earlier this month. There was a bus that turned over on the border between Skagway and Canada, and we had several amazing nurses, some APPs. Dr. Jody Todd dropped everything, drove over to the clinic to hand and worked to help a whole bunch of people out. So just on behalf of Skagway Clinic, we just have to say thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rosenfeld. Any other public comment? Okay, so consent agenda, board meetings are in there, special board meetings, special board of director meetings, and the finances are in there. So it's a,
I make a motion, I would move that we adopt the consent agenda.
Dr. Astor seconds it. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we'll go to old business A, hospital capacity update. We'll start with Kim, and then we'll go on to our next subject. Kim,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine. Thank you.
Okay, I'm getting a little bit of feedback on my end, it sounds like. Apologize for not being there in person. I'm in Anchorage, so I'll give you a brief update. We currently have one patient at Wildflower Court with COVID, one at BRH. We have a total of 6 employees out with COVID, 2 from Wildflower Court, 4 from Bartlett. Last month's numbers for patient days, CCU was 88, Med-Surg 475, MHU at 254 with a current census of 5, OB 55, nursery 40, ED saw 1,057 patients last month. Wildflower Court census is 52. Hospice census is 5 with a length of stay of 62 days. Home health and hospice is 20, and we have about 5 patients waiting for placement, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions concerning hospital capacity? Oh, great. Can we put that memo up on page 25?
What's the, which memo are you referring to?
It's from Ian concerning rainforest recovery, right? From right after the finance. We apologize, and this is
My CEO letter.
I think it's up higher. It's right underneath the graph. That's very colorful brown. After the financials, after the financials. Look. Go on, look for the big graph.
It's not in my packet either, in that location.
It's in my packet.
it's in my packet.
It's next month.
It's not in the public.
Yeah, I can't read it.
You have it, Dr. Jones, in your packet?
No, I don't. I've, you know, we changed the way we get board packages, so I was unable to get it. Then I called Sharon Price, and thank you very much for sending me the package. I have the public package. It's not in there. You know, I don't know what to
Okay,
say. I don't know how to respond to it.
So, thank you, Dr. Jones. I thought everybody got this. I don't know why it's not in here. I also have a printed copy here and see it's in there.
I really think it's unfair for us to have a discussion about this memo that we sent if it's not really on the public. It's not on the public board thing. I mean, we are an opens meeting people, so if it's not here, it's not here.
Okay, well, there's a couple of things that we can do then. So as Dr. Jones spoke, we are having a meeting with the mayor and with the chair of the city finance, Christine Wool, city leadership, I believe Katie and possibly Robert Barr. Myself will be there, representing the board along with Dr. Jones. Our administrative people will be there. Ian will be there Thursday. So I hopefully Joe, our incoming CEO, hopefully will be there too as well. So, you know, I just want to make sure that I have this on the record is that I hear what everybody's saying about rainforest recovery and how crucially important this is to our community. I understand that. I really do. And I believe that all of our board members feel the same way, you know, we're really sympathetic to what's going on there. I spoke with the mayor at least 3 times today. I've spoke to our liaison, Wade here. I'm gonna let speak here just in a minute. I've spoke to Ian probably 10 times in the last few days, and Dr. Jones and him and I have talked several times in the last week, you know, concerning what we can do. And I know that everybody has a different idea of what the path should be on this. So, you know, I kind of want to talk a little bit about the timeline here. And then I'm going to let Ian speak for a minute about this, and then I'm going to tell you what my recommendations are, and then we'll let the board weigh in on this. So as when Ian came here last October, we definitely were bleeding money. We were losing money at $1,000 or $1 million a month. Ian put his head together and hired a CFO that very capable, who turned out to hire him as our incoming CEO. Ian put together some plans. We did some decision documents that Ian put together for all of us, and after talking with the staff and his senior leadership team, his management team, on how we should proceed, and came up with core services and non-core services. So I know we're specifically talking about rainforest recovery. So rainforest recovery, by this board, by this body, decided that it was a non-core service. Okay. With that being said, we, meaning myself as your board president, with our CEO and with our mayor and with our city leadership, went out after we heard public comment to see what we can do to make this program, rainforest recovery, work in our organization. So one of the things that the board had instructed us to do was to meet with Search, and we met with Search, and we talked to Chuck Clement and Mr. Harris, their CFO. Their board chair was there. Their COO from Search was in the room. We were in the room with the mayor. We were in the room with the city manager and the deputy city manager, myself and Ian, and I don't remember if there were any other people there, but it was a down in City Hall, and we're telling them that, you know, this is a critical service for not just Bartlett, but for our citizens of Juneau, and we're telling them this. And their board chair told me that we had 3.5 services in another community, which was Sitka, and because that 3.5 service was not an economic driver for them, it was putting such a burden on them that they decided to discontinue the 3.5 service, and that the Search took a hit because they stopped the service. But, you know, this is what they told us. This is flat out how they told us and explained this to them. And we went out and had more of conversation, and then at the conversation we said, what can we do? You know, is there anything Search can do to help us? Because this is what the board instructed us to do, to make this 3.5 service line at Rainforest Recovery. Can you guys do anything to help us? And they looked us all flat in the eye and told us absolutely not. There's nothing you can do. The drain from the 3.5 services that Search was dealing with years ago was affecting other service lines that were more vital to the fiscal responsibility of the organization. So they decided to pull it away. So, you know, we've talked about this. We came to the board. I've had this conversation with Dr. Jones. You know, I don't have this in writing from Search. I have witnesses or whatever, and I've actually asked Ian if we could get this in writing from Search saying this. I don't think they would have too much of a problem saying that 3.5 service doesn't work for them. And, you know, we also explained to them that a lot of their beneficiaries, you know, and from what we've been told, 50% of the people there that are in Rainforest Recovery are beneficiaries of Search. And So, you know, that's something that's really important for us to know that too. So non-core service, we went and then we put together our, what Dr. Jones is talking about was our resolution, and our resolution was that if you don't get sustainable funding in some way from the city or from source, that Rainforest Recovery, as we know it, will have to close. Okay, so that resolution went out, and this was gonna go to the next finance committee meeting in August, I believe. And unfortunately, we had the glacier outburst. And because of the glacier outburst, that finance committee meeting was canceled. It was moved into September 4th. So during that period of time, that month period, flag period, our city leaders met with GHS, Gaston Human Services, and said, what can you do to help us with the service line, you know? And then please help educate us on the difference between 3.1 service and 3.5 service. So they, you know, we put together some slides. They worked with Joe to put slides together. Correct me if I'm wrong in any of this part at all. They put together some slides. We went and met with the city at the finance committee on September 4th. We had these talk to them. The finance committee, you know, still wasn't happy with us with what happened with the Aurora Behavioral Health Center. You know, lay it all out there. They didn't want to give us any more funding or any programs, but they did say, hey, we'll give you $500,000 to help you bridge this program to Gaston Human Services. Gaston Human Services got up there and testified that they will be able to provide services. They have 19 current beds. They plan on opening up some more. I believe it's between 4 and 8. 4 of the beds will be with more of direct medical direction that Bartlett will be providing for them. Again, it's not completely laid out yet because we didn't expect this to happen so soon. I didn't want this to happen so soon. I didn't want this whole Gastineau thing to come out so soon, because what Dr. Jones has said to me over and over and over again is that he's not so sure that this program belongs in the hospital, but he's really concerned about it. And I don't mean to be speaking for you, Lindy, here, is that he wants a warm handoff, a proper handoff to GHS to make sure that the citizens, our Juneau citizens, are properly taken care of. And that didn't happen. I can honestly say that because what happened was it went to the September 4th meeting. Our employees saw this, and our employees had to make life decisions for themselves to try to find positions in our organization that they will be able to provide for their families with decent benefits that they currently have at the hospital and stuff like that. So our employees quit. And at that particular time, when we didn't have enough employees to staff the unit, it was decided that we would close. It was decided by administration that we would close the program. As soon as they made that decision, I was informed. So I was informed of that, and then they informed the rest of the community and stuff like that. So with that being said, I've spoken to several community leaders, like I said, the mayor and stuff, and our plans are to meet with the mayor and everybody else in the city on Thursday and to see if there is a path. And I don't know if there is a path or not, if there is a path for us to open Rainforest Recovery for whatever it takes, if it's 10 employees that we have to bring in, or if it's moving people over there, or what the path is to open it back up for the next few months to make sure that we have a better, warmer handoff to GHS or not. So that's kind of a timeline. That's kind of where we're at today. My recommendation to this board right now is that we let Dr. Jones and I and Ian and the city leaders and Joe meet with the mayor and come up with a path and see if this is possible. With that, I just want to turn this over to Ian a little bit, just to make sure that you can fill in the rest of the gaps for me. And then we'll let the board.
Thank you. You know, first of all, I wanted to say that when we started this process back in February, we decided that we'd be very open and transparent regarding all of the issues that we were surfacing in the hospital. Many of those issues had never been described. And as a result, we felt that it was really important to bring people along, describing each of these issues, not only in individual meetings, but also in my letters to the CEO letters. So we were very, very transparent. Became very apparent very early that our non-core services were one of the major areas that was going to cause the bankruptcy of the hospital if they continue. And then the question that we posed to the board is, what do we want to do about non-core services? I also had a CEO letter that was available publicly of what core and non-core services were, because typically there are a lot of services that are not part of a hospital, and they have been embedded here for various different reasons. Many of them feel well-intentioned, but the hospital had since 2018, had no longer been able to cross-subsidize these services. We brought that to the finance committee and the budget. They gave us clear direction, come up with some decision tools to be able to figure out what you want to do and come back to us, which we did in the late spring, early summer, with our recommendations. We then were asked by the city to spend some time getting input from the community, which we did. We also spent time going over to the Rainforest Recovery as others. I was there twice. I was there with Kim. I was there with Aaron. I was there with Chad. I know that Kim and Joe went over there multiple times, including conversations with Dr. Joya, sorry, I'm blanking on his name. The reason I bring this up is because privately and around the hospital, it's been said that we did not have any conversations with the individuals whatsoever. We tried to include everyone. As you know, many of them attended and provided commentary for public comment, not only at the board level, but also in our community forums. So I think that the concern that we have not been open is just not consistent with what actually was done. And I am disappointed that that's been cast about that, not only to me, but in addition to the people that are direct reports. That's just inappropriate and it's not true. So that's number one. Number two, we moved along very rapidly with an understanding of what core was not for. And we had decided that non-core services, we had to include the city on that. And at some point in time, we had resolutions that went through the finance committee, went through the board, and came out with what the board wants to do. So one example was with the BOPS program. They said, that's core. We want you to put that back under your purview, Ian, and start a plan on improving that. Another one was for the ADA program. We don't have the staff, they need to move on. The one that we're referring to today really was about, we want to give the city enough time. So we said, if, at the latest, October 31st, at the latest, not the earliest, the latest, we want some sort of indication from the city whether or not they will permanently fund this entity. And we had Joe work through the numbers with Matt and show them to Max about direct and indirect costs. We also, during that time, had leaders that were trying to improve the financial operations of it. And it may be there, but the question, if there was billing issues, why wasn't that fixed years ago, right? What sort of competency do you have when you have billing problems that go on for many? months. But I hadn't heard that. That was the first time I heard it was tonight. But having said that, I thought that the board the reason I bring this up is that I've also been told that I don't have the authority to make this decision by a board member. And as you know, board members cannot act individually, they have to act collectively. So the question is, why do I have a board member coming saying I violated the authority levels that I had? My understanding is it was very clear that if we did not get funding, permanent funding, and that was just not for 1 year, that was multiple years, that the program would shut down. Now, many people watched those programs and they knew what the criteria was for shutting down. And once the city made a decision, and I think it was a good decision, not criticizing, but they made a decision of how much they would fund, which is 500,000. I think people had to make certain decisions that were best for their family. I don't fault them for that. I am appreciative of all the work that they've done here. I'm appreciative of all the clinicians, do a wonderful job here. But we have to keep in mind that the first responsibility of these people is to their families, and they need to be able to do that. So having said that, then there's another dispersion that this thing happened haphazardly, like, you know, we were so incompetent, we can't even figure out which way the bathrooms are. And again, I take very large exception to it. Number one, when you can't staff a program, your first responsibility is the safe discharge of every single person. We did that, right? We did that. In fact, the public comment said we did that. That's the first responsibility. Now, we only have about 100 patients a year in this program, only 50 which are from the city and borough of Juneau. So we're talking one a week possibly coming to us. So what was the clinical quality at fault? It's a future problem, right? Now, if the person is that clinically bad, they'll be put on the inpatient floors. But what's the difference between the fact that we can't handle neurosurgical visits and we fly them out with another patient that we can't handle and we fly them out? There's absolutely no difference. We do that in every service line all the time because we can't handle it. So again, the fact that it's been said that there's no plan, there's no way we're doing this, we are responding just like any ED responds to what they get anytime to what's been handed to us. And we had to decide. It is whatever the board wants, regulation trumps a board's desire. And what I mean by that is that if I can't staff things safely, I have to stabilize and transport those patients. That's a well-known thing. It's embedded in TALA and all those other things. So that's what we actually did. So where is the horrible quality that's been cast in this, as well as said, not only to my face, but all throughout the hospital? Number two, the question is what to do about future patients. Again, about future patients, which I'm not sure we've even had one since this, is we're going to handle them as best as we can. If they need to be put on a medical search for that, we will do that. But that's really only if they're roughly around 3.7. I'm not quite sure. And we're not necessarily allowed to take 3.7 and 3.5 service, right? What authority do we have that we will take a patient that we shouldn't do? We put them in the hospital, just like we've always had. So again, the fact that, we're saying, this was just haphazard, I take major exception to. The fact that, people are saying that we didn't have the authority, I take major exception to. The fact that this is the second time in 15 months that we're going through a major kerfuffle at the board means that the board still has significant amount of issues with members who go way beyond the authority levels of a board member. And I'm specifically talking about you, Dr. Jones. Right? It's so destructive what you're doing last year and this year to the wonderful people that work in this hospital. And I don't understand why you would demoralize our people over a program that we can't even afford. The city says it can't afford, and we're trying our best to be able to handle the patients that come to us. And Search said they didn't want to help out. which is 50% of the patients. We're doing the best damn job that we can do with what we have. And I really resent the fact that for the second time in 15 months, you put yourself and your concerns ahead of the hospital, ahead of the patients, and I don't want to say patients, ahead of the.
Yeah,
of the- I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. Obviously, my apologies, Dr. Jones. But we have a board issue. It's not a clinical issue. It's not anything that our people do. They're wonderful. I've been so impressed with the wonderful people in this we have. But how do we resolve issues when we can't agree to them? And then the only resort that happens is that we walk it to the paper. How does that help Bart? How does that help one single patient?
So at this moment,
I apologize to the board.
right. I really think I need to be able to respond to some of those accusations.
Hold on one second, Dr. Jones.
You maintain.
At this moment, I want to take an at ease. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Everybody, let's mute everything and we'll take a break and go to
I'm
the
done.
restrooms and we'll come back in 5 minutes. Okay. So we are back on the record, back on recording.
Okay.
Hang on one second, Dr. Johnson. I just want to make sure that our conversations here are nice and civil and respectful. If I feel at times that they aren't, I will stop them and go forward. So with that, Dr. Jones.
So anyways, you know, in the ER, when I really get in a stressful situation, which like, frankly, this is a stressful situation, what I try to do is I pull myself back and I say, what's best for the patient? What's best for the patient? What's best for the patient? So I guess as we move forward, I want us to always keep that in mind. You know, my ego, Mr. Warden's ego, they're not the most important thing. Which is most important is what's best for the patient. So one thing I will address is that it would be great if we could transfer these individuals. You know, a lot of times we have to transfer individuals to different places for the level of care. But as every expert who knows this in Juneau, as I mentioned in my letter, there's no other place to send these people to. So whether we like it or not, there are clinical challenge or problem, however you want to frame that. So I want to read for everyone the resolution 524. And it says, the hospital board of directors resolves to seek dedicated subsidy funding from the public and private sources to defray the direct and indirect operating costs of RRC. The board directs management to explore potential third-party operators for the program. If dedicated subsidization or third-party operator cannot be secured within a reasonable period of time, quote, by October 31st, 2024, the board reluctantly resolves to close RRC consistent with all applicable city, state, and federal guidelines and notices. Then it goes on to say, the board directs management to pursue dedicated subsidy funding and potential third-party operators and present an update to the board at its November 2024 meeting, along with a plan of closure and redeployment of the building to more suitable hospital programs if dedicated subsidizations or third-party operator have not been secured. So that's, we invited the public. We all sat down for multiple things. We got their input. We heard how important this was. We committed to do what we could to try to figure this out. So what have we done? We went to the hospital finance committee, we went to the city finance committee a couple times. A couple CEO and board president talked to the CERT CEO, board president. No clinicians talked about this. We try to, we have no plan what to do with people in the future, and then we shut it down. And this is clinically, and I'm sorry if I'm offending people and making feel hurt, but this is clinically dangerous and people are going to get hurt. People are going to die. And we need to do this right. And so that's why what I would propose right now, and again, you have to realize this is not just coming out of the blue. I have texted the administration. I have texted the hospital board. I have called the administration. I have called the hospital board president. I have sat down with an hour meeting with the CEO and CFO, telling them my concerns, asking them to say, hey, look, put this on hold until we make certain that no patient is going to be left behind. No patient is going to be hurt by this decision. And that's not what's happening. So what I'm asking my fellow board members, I'm sorry it came out this way, but my God, I had no clue. No one had any clue between the last board meeting and this board meeting. And so I'm sorry it came out this way, but we did not have the time to deliberate this as we said we we're going to in Resolution 524. So I'm asking the board to direct the administration to reopen Rainforest until we can have a suitable plan either to keep it going, because again, I think that if we stop this program, we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot about critical access. Besides, we're going to hurt a lot of patients. And if we are going to stop this program, we do it in such a way that is medically safe and responsible for the citizens of Juneau, those ones suffering from alcohol and drug addiction. So what I would like to ask, I would like to put a proposal to the board that we have them reopen the program. I am committed 100% at whatever capacity that Mr. Warden thinks I have. Right now, it's a citizen who is concerned about this population to work on a safe solution, whether that be continuation at Rainforest or whether that be transition, that makes sure that no patient gets harmed in the way we make that decision. And you know, the reality is we have a financial crisis, but we're not going to go bankrupt next month. We're making money, you know, if we need to hold off on the ER project to make sure that we care for these patients, fine with me. But what we need to do is care for these patients. So with that, I'll end, and I believe that I have a board motion on the table.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. I don't believe that we could put a motion on the table like that. It's not correct. It's not already.
So how would you like me to put that motion on the table?
I think that we'll let the board members talk about this.
Okay.
Let's talk about this and then we'll see if where we come out. Wade, Mr. Bryson, our liaison.
Thank you, Mr. Solomon Gross. Man, once again, there's no easy topic. The easy topics get put on the consent agenda and then they get passed. And so if you guys are dealing with something, the city's dealing with something, it's because these are tough topics. I want to start, and I'll try to be as concise as I can, Mr. Chair, that I have actually had a family member benefit from the services of Rainforest Recovery. So I'm not a stranger to it. And I'd like to say that no one wanted Rainforest Recovery to close. The Assembly didn't want it to close. You guys didn't want it to close. But not wanting something to close is not always connected to the realities of the situation. And I say that as a business owner that has closed businesses. The beginning of my time here as the liaison, the Assembly had crystal clear instructions to this board. Get your act together, get your finances straight, and then let's focus on having a CEO that we can keep around for a little while. Like, that's it. That's what I remember, the Assembly giving you those two directives. And I want to compliment this board at being awesome at correcting those. I was able to say with a lot of pride and on your guys' behalf that Bartlett turned a profit for the first time since 2019, thanks to your direct efforts. So what you're doing is working. The Assembly wants to fund treatment. And the fact that the Assembly was willing to fund treatment at $500,000 outside of the budget cycle, that's probably the largest I forget the phrase when you fund something outside of the cycle, but that was absolutely the largest one that I'd seen us do. It just showed the Assembly's commitment that we do care about these people. We care about treatment. We want to see it done. We had information from city staff that they were working with GHS, which is the organization that we just funded to open up a 51-bed treatment facility or inpatient beds. They got $2 million during the budget or during the affordable housing round. So we absolutely are on board with making sure that the city funds are going to treatment facilities that we believe are sustainable and are going to work for us. We have the same desired outcome for the vulnerable patients that are receiving this level of treatment. I really like the decision plan that kind of made it easy. We had a committee of the whole, not the recent one, not the September 4th finance, but a previous committee of the whole that kind of sent everything to finance. Hospice and home care, it didn't even have to get out of committee of the whole. The Assembly agreed that is such an important role of the hospital that the Assembly funded it unanimous consent before. I mean, we did that in committee of the whole. That made it easy to go to the Assembly. We passed those things for real, and then they take time. It was really impactful. It was not lost on me that that's if search couldn't make it, and my understanding is search only focuses on profit centers, medical profit centers, and so search is saying nope, we're not touching that one. That's a very clear indicator. This is going to be a very hard sector to make money in. The mayor talking about how there are a handful of people that are coming to the Thursday meeting. That was kind of the mayor's same understanding. It would probably be best for the board to at least know what the outcome of that Thursday meeting, because it's going to be the finance chair who is very much in favor of trying to figure out funding. It also has city leadership, Dr. Jones. So having that information, having everybody, and what I like to say about the mayor is that she is awesome at getting a good cross section of the committee. She likes to get opposite opinions. She likes to get somebody that's kind of neutral. She wants to get the best information to come out of this. So if Mayor Weldon put the group together, I feel quite confident about that. I did want to give the example of like the school board, and I don't want to downplay the services that are provided at Rainforest, but for the school board prior to last year, everything was a sacred cow. Nothing could be cut. They couldn't cut a program that saved $10,000 or $20,000. They were like, well, it's only $20,000. So they were unwilling to cut even the littlest things. They wouldn't make any accommodations. They were like, no, we got to do everything that we said we're doing because we have a reason for doing everything. And that got the school board into the worst financial predicament that I've seen them in. You guys are on your way out of a financial predicament. And the city, probably unanimous consent, meaning that all 9 assembly members are behind funding Gastineau Humane Service or GHS to be able to properly care for these individuals and move forward in a way that works with the hospital. I was the one asking Dr. Swinton the questions. How much money do you need? And then we came up real close to that, and we could probably come up with more to make that work. What I know this assembly will fight, and it will be a split decision. Most of it, and my prediction would be that it probably wouldn't favor Rainforest Recovery, but it would put us into a lot of contention and would be very divisive to try and go backwards. We have assembly support to fund programs to start up. They're in favor of that. That's absolutely what the assembly wanted. You did not have full assembly support to go backwards to the tune of, I think somebody said $1.5 million to really restart Rainforest Recovery. If we have a program that's closing, I know for a fact that you can't just switch it and all of a sudden we're back in business. I would imagine that it would be quite a hiring process to get those 10 people, the 10 qualified people in this hiring environment. So while I really appreciate Dr. Jones's perspective of how do we care for that one patient? What's the best thing for that one patient? And while I agree that that is absolutely the way that I want our doctors to think, as the board, you're thinking of that one patient, but you're also thinking of every patient in the hospital right now. And you're thinking of every patient that is going to be served by Bartlett in the next 10 years. And so while it's one thing to say that money doesn't matter, and under no circumstance should we close a program, when the very thing, the outburst flood that stopped the conversation of us deciding the future of rainforest recovery, I promise more citizens are invested and are following the glacial outburst flooding than are screaming with their pitchforks about rainforest recovery. And I assure you that any funding that the city has to do for glacier outburst flooding is going to dwarf any ask for rainforest recovery. The city does not have unlimited funds. We have our restricted budget reserve, which is probably, we already started to tap that. And that is something that we absolutely have to have a plan to pay back. So, well, I greatly appreciate everything that has been said here tonight. I wanted you guys to see it from like this whole, I was trying to look at it from a larger perspective, because I know where the conversations are going to go. These are the other factors that are absolutely going to enter into how much money would be available if we tried to turn back the clock. And I do believe that if you ask for money to go forward, you would get more money than if you asked for money to go backwards and restart the program. It's just how this assembly operates. It's kind of the mindset that this assembly is operating off of. It's the information that city staff has given us. And Dr. Jones is right. Or somebody said it, that it's not any different than if we have to fly a patient out for neurosurgery, because on Monday I fly out for neurosurgery because I can't get that service here. So I just wanted to share those two personal things about it. This is a really, really tough conversation. And I would normally say a lot less, but we had moved this board and the assembly, I felt like was moving forward towards hospital solutions in a really methodical and thoughtful way. And for a flare up, which is kind of what we've run into here, I've been a little surprised when I came back. I missed the September 4th meeting, because I thought that we had a really clear direction for making the hospital sustainable and, you know, correctly downsizing or removing these programs that weren't part of the core and were part of the financial problem that cannot be ignored, because we're still very connected to that. It's still very fresh on everybody's mind. Mr. Chair, I thank you for allowing me the longest amount of time I've ever spoken to this board meeting. I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. Hal.
Well, as you know, Mr. Chairman, I went to every one of those meetings, the public meetings. I listened to every bit of that testimony, and at the end, I spoke myself about a family member of mine that actually died as a result of addiction problems. So I wanted rainforest recovery to stay, and I wanted it to succeed. But I also was party to the decision memo the decision process that we set up. And I understand why we didn't follow it the way that we had expected to, because staff quit. And so dealing with that problem is a management problem. That's not a board problem. Management had to adaptively respond to that problem, not big staff. And as near as I could tell, they responded the way we would have wanted them to. Now, maybe I don't understand everything, but management had to respond to that problem. And I don't see why we would try to undo that at this point. I don't see why we would take, as a board, some action to try to restart rainforest without some kind of plan as to how that's going to be sustained on for years. So I'm completely against just sort of, this highly reactionary, idea of restarting it without some kind of a plan. And I believe, and maybe I'm wrong, but I believe that management acted appropriately in the scope of what we would have expected them to do to adaptively deal with this personal problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Lisa.
To Hal's point, I agree also. I have personally been touched by family members that have struggled with alcoholism, and in fact, one of my aunts died in a particularly unfortunate accident because of it. I, like everybody on this board, did not want to have to pay for alcohol to bring forth. However, and I do understand, reading the agreement that, we had set out for November. But I also agree with Hal that circumstances came about that made management have to make a decision that was difficult. But I agree with Hal. I don't see any benefit to going backwards. We have a way forward, and I think that we need to focus on that. So I'm not going to say anything else, but I agree. And to your point, I agree with what you said too.
Thank you,
Thank
Lisa.
you.
Dr. Rashford.
Well, I have been, of course, peripherally touched as well. It seems like everybody, it's a big problem, and I was very sympathetic to Rainforest. And I, like Lindy, thought that we would sort of revisit this again before we ultimately closed it. So did it happen abruptly? Yes. Did it seem like some people might have been a little blindsided by how abruptly? Yes. Could communication have been better? Yeah, perhaps, yes. Did it need to happen? Yes. Safety first, always the trump card. It has to be safety first. Is it reasonable to just yo-yo and go back and forth? I don't know, Lindy. I'm not really that supportive of that. Lindy, you and I were at a meeting when I don't know the ins and the outs of the 3.4s and the 3.1s and things like that. It was really nice to hear Tina's perspective. And so my suggestion would be to go forward with what you're doing now, is to meet with the assembly because they're the funding source, and with administration, and with Lindy, more about it than most of the docs. And then is Tina involved, or is there another clinician involved in that meeting?
So John, thank you. Yes, I've invited Tina to that meeting, and again, I really think what we need to understand here is, number one, I don't see this going back. Never once did I think that when we did our due diligence on this program, that we would come to the conclusion that we would discontinue the only 3.5 level program in Southeast Alaska. Never once did I think that was going to be the case. I thought that once we did due diligence, once we had careful conversations on the board about what are the impacts of not having this level of service to our hospital and to our community, we would be going forward full on with Rainforest. Now remember, Rainforest has been there for 40 years. And remember, we always talk about who is our best CEO for this organization. That was Bob Valiant. Bob Valiant took on this program. He made this program work. We can make this program work. Unfortunately, some have abandoned the idea that we can make this work. And frankly, I think that's not correct. I think when we sit down with the city leaders, with everyone involved, and we kind of really carefully, clinically say, well, what does this mean to our community? We're going to come back. We would come back to the board with the best decision for our hospital, the best decision for our clinic to keep this program going, because without it, there's no other place to send these patients. They're going to be they're going to be sitting on our hospital ward for days upon days because there ain't no place to go. When they go, they're going to go out and they're going to come back to their ER and they're going to do the same thing over and over and over again. So that's why I want to ask the board to say, hey, we had this plan. Hey, let's get this thing going running. We're not going backwards. Hopefully we're going forward, and we can make a decision if it's not possible to go forward once we have done careful due diligence. And in my clinical opinion, careful due diligence hasn't been done. And so that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. Mr. Bryson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to point out that there is zero funding dedicated to rainforest recovery being open now. At that meeting, they changed the ordinance to say $500,000 for gas and human services. Rainforest recovery is not on any agenda right now to receive any funds. So even if the board made a decision, it would have to be at the next board meeting that you guys wanted to then come to the city with a dollar figure ask. That would probably, we got the election is coming up, so it wouldn't be till sometime in November that an ordinance would even be heard at the assembly level. And it would be probably into December before that 30-day time period would be up that we could take public testimony and then actually have the funds. So even if today this board said, hey, we want to try and keep rainforest open, you couldn't get any money from the city for at least 2 months. And even then it wouldn't be guaranteed because, as I was saying during my diatribe there, that this was a contentious issue that we don't even have the assembly members on the assembly that would be making this decision. So for the board to think that they'd be able to predict the assembly's outcome, votes either way could make it where it was a no anyways. So it would be in the board's best interest if there's really a desire to try and do something with rainforest recovery, that assembly finance or assembly funds is going to have to be your first step, because if it's a no, then I would not want to put this board through a tremendous amount of work for something that the city is not going to subsidize. That is a very real financial factor to this at this point, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Shelley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to acknowledge that I, like every other member of this board, did not want to see rainforest closed. But when we started this whole process, we knew that it was going to be hard. And this is just a part of that. I think what's important now, both as what Dr. Jones and Ian have said, is that we have to focus on what can we do moving forward to keep people as safe as we can.
Thank you, Shelley. I want to acknowledge that Derek Johnson joined us. She's online here. I'm not sure if she's in an area where she's able to talk. So, Deb, if you can unmute. If not, we'll move on. Okay, we'll move on. So I want to remind this board that when we started this process in February, probably January, February of what we're going to do to get financial stability, we all agree that this is not going to be for the faint of heart, that we're going to have to make some very, very tough decisions. And the one thing about a good board and a good assembly, and Mr. Bryson kind of said it too, is that we have different opinions. And sometimes you just can't get consensus. But it's really a good thing where we are respectful with each other. We listen to what everybody says, and we make the best decisions that we feel as a board member best for our community. I personally want to talk about rainforest recovery too. The reason why I ever got involved with anything to do with the city was that I own a business downtown, and I see homeless population and addiction and alcoholism all my life, literally all my life. I've walked down from walking out of my building to seeing it and talking to people. And I actually was right there when we had the tragic event on July 15th, when the person was shot by the police, that I'm sure was having some mental issues as well, along with addiction that he's talked about openly. So me being involved with this for my adult life and working this and then wanting to be more involved with it as my kids grew up. And I got involved with the Homeless Coalition. I got involved with making sure that we had wed housing here with the housing program and making sure that we raise money to take care of the people that chose not to get help, but we still saw that they were unhoused and needed help. And myself, my business, we donated money as the community did, all came together. So this was really hard for me. And when we put out the resolution and we talked about that if we didn't get sustainable funding for many years for Rainforest Recovery, that we would be closing this program on July 31st. I don't know if you guys remember, but I actually talked about, wow, that's quick, guys. And you, as the board, reminded me that this is what our decisions were to make sure that this goes through. So as much as I appreciate what Dr. Jones says, and as much as I feel for these patients and knowing how hard Dr. Jones has been a substance abuse physician and how important the MVP program is to Dr. Jones and how he wants to make sure that we're taking care of all of our citizens in Juneau. I think that we have to hit this one right, and I'm not sure that we got this one correct in closing so quickly, but it is what it is. I believe that our administrator had no choice, but when he had no staff, but to close the program, and it's in his right because of all the laws and restrictions and everything. I am looking forward to meeting with the city leadership on Thursday, along with Dr. Jones, and if he's bringing another clinician, that's great, Wendy. I'm looking forward to that, and I think the most important thing is that we still, even though we have a disagreement here, we still stay together as a board and united as a board, and we work through this, and whatever decision that comes out of this, we do this together as a board, because it's the most important thing for our community. This should not divide us. And with that,
yeah, I mean, clearly there's not to support to keep this program going from the board until we can do a warm handoff. And okay, I accept it. I'm part of the board, but I want the board to realize, okay, over the last year, there's been 5 things that have happened. So first of all, we had to emergency shut down our inpatient inpatient psychiatric services because we couldn't get staff. Secondly, we made a commitment to the city members with our resolutions that we made about the crisis stabilization that said we're going to try to keep it going until October 31st. Well, a week or two later, we abruptly closed it down because we don't have staff. We've been struggling to get psychiatric emergency services staff, and so sometimes we don't have things covered. What's the excuse? We don't have staff. So now we are prematurely closing down this program without any discussion about a warm handoff that protects the safest. And what's our reason? We can't get staff. So I think the board needs to realize we have a problem with this. You know, we have a medical staff services that is completely gutted. We have many department heads that there's no one ahead. Our head of behavioral health, the day before they shut it down, she resigned. So we have all these staff issues. And at some point, the board needs to say, you know, we can't come on making decisions that affect the health and well-being of our patients because we can't get staff. So anyways, I understand that the board is not with me to try to keep this open until we can make sure that we transition in, and that's okay. that's the will of the board, but just my final thoughts.
Thank you, Dr. Jones, and look forward to meeting on Thursday with the city leaders. So it's 7 o'clock. We're gonna take another quick 5-minute break or 7-minute break till 5 after 7, and then we will go on. So.
We're unmuted and we're recording.
Okay, thank you. So we're still on to old business, and I'm gonna turn this over to Mr. Warden, and he's gonna talk about ophthalmology and dermatology update.
Okay, I have 3 items. Let's talk about dermatology first, because that's a fairly straightforward. The hospital did not have a dermatology practice. The practice was a private practice that we leased space at. We have a physician assistant by the name of Chris, and for this individual to be able to practice, they have to be sponsored by a dermatologist or someone who would feel comfortable doing it, let's say at the family practice. His sponsor decided to retire. And that was Dr.
Chica.
No, well, that was the first one, but he had Dr. Troy Ritchie then sponsor him. So there was 2 physicians that sponsored him over time. Both decided to retire, and he went out and tried to get new sponsors, has not been able to do that. So the reason for that closure is that he cannot work without a sponsor. Secondly, there was a bill, Senate Bill, let me get this, Senate Bill 115. That would have, if passed, would have allowed the PAs to do basic dermatological services. That did not pass. And so he doesn't have the authority to do some of the clinical practices he's been doing. Does that make some sense? So that was independent practitioner having problems finding sponsors. I don't know if there's any independent dermatologists left in the community. Comcast and then search, I think. So. But this community is struggling with that. The second one is about ophthalmology. Typically, hospitals that have ophthalmology, it's a emergency procedure. For example, if there's damage when that's not something that we can do, if I recall correctly. Therefore, that has to be sent out. So we've never done that, or not in the recent history that we've done that. So when you're talking about ophthalmology, you're talking about 2 things that are done typically in a physician practice that are not part of the hospital. One is cataract, and the other one is the injections for those who have diabetes. We've had for a number of years a contract with the physician group and bring in supplies. That's something that is a significant loss for the hospital, significant, 150, 200,000 a year. But we're trying to, we're in discussions with docs, whether or not they would change their rate for us. The drugs that are brought in are extremely expensive. I'm not sure how many units we bring in, but I'm usually signing about an $80,000 bill invoice. And we don't bring it up unless we have injections going on. And so a decision point document has been presented to me that I'm reviewing. This is an area that I would close if we can move it to ophthalmologists and out in the community. We are having discussions with those. But again, our initial discussion with them was that they would not be ready to take on those until after Christmas. So we're kind of in a standstill on that because obviously those injections for the eyes are very important.
Okay. Dr. Roster, then.
So the reason that the ophthalmologist from Anchorage stopped coming is because we were not able to support them with it was too expensive for the drugs. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, we're picking that up.
We were picking, so why did that guys from Anchorage stop coming? They rotated 2 or 3 different docs now.
I'm not sure that I know the history of that. Does Kim or Joe, do you know the history of the docks?
You know,
Yeah, thank you through the chair. So my understanding is that we are the company that we use up in Anchorage. It's 3 or 4 different docks that would come down and rotate, and each of them would have a different type of medical or medications that they would use. And so that put a big burden on the pharmacy. But there's 2 or 3 of them that would come down and they'd rotate through to provide that service. Did that answer the question?
And I think the question is, why are they stopping coming down?
That would be, I'll have to follow up on that with Sarah Dodd potentially. My understanding is that they needed a pause because they didn't have people to rotate through. And then we were looking, I think, at the expense of bringing them down as well.
So I don't mean to speak to you, for you, Dr. Astor. So this was not administrative's choice for them to stop coming down. This was the doctor's choices up in Anchorage of not coming down. Is that what you're saying, Kim?
That is my understanding, yes, that there was I think a month period where they weren't going to be able to provide services. And so we weren't able to have anybody come down to do that. And that got us into thinking of the consistency of being able to have somebody regularly. Again, making sure that we have, people in places to be able to provide that care for patients on a regular basis as opposed to sporadic.
Dr. Astor, follow-up.
Yeah, my follow-up is that's what I've heard, is that there were some issues on our end that made it a little more challenging for them to come down. And that's what I have heard.
Yeah.
And I've now that's secondhand information because I've not spoken to them directly. But and then my other second comment that will probably be reiterated by Hal Geiger is that I've gotten a little bit of comment from the community that it is a bit of a community issue and hardship, so that if we could, if it is only $100,000 or manipulating our staff a little bit, I think we'd be supportive of that because it's pretty problematic.
I don't know if it's a staffing, our staffing issue, but I would imagine, we have to, getting those drugs up might be, we'll check into that.
Hal.
Okay, so there's 2 issues for me. One, the first issue, which we were talking about, and I guess I heard we'll get back to the board as to why services discontinued. But for me, more importantly, we've had a member of the public communicate with the board about this. And in that communication, a member of the public said he was told by the ophthalmologist that they're not coming back because the hospital does not want them here anymore. So I think we need some communication on 2 levels with the public. First, we need to have somebody specifically respond to this communication. And so I just wrote back and said, thanks for contacting me. Without comment.
Yeah, that didn't come directly to me, so.
Okay, but then I think we
Forward that to you.
so we need a response to this individual, but we need some other response to the community. I think there's a lot of people in this community who had retinal detachment and so forth, who like these practitioners. And so I think we need some communications to them for what's next, where we're going. Okay.
So, Kim, is it final that they're not coming back, or is this just because they couldn't staff it for, they couldn't staff physicians down this month? Do you know? Are they gonna?
our Omni Tech took it over job. Kenny, I can address that one if I could. I had a conversation with Sarah Dodd today about it. We had been reaching out to the physicians to try to get them to come back. And we were reaching out to other providers to see if we could bridge that. Knowing that there was interest in some providers moving into the community next spring was my understanding. So we were trying to get providers in to fill this service. We also had some turnover in the clinic. It was performed 2 days a month over the last couple of months. We were trying to, we had one of our ophthalmology techs step away. And so as you can imagine, when you're only providing the service only twice a month, we have to have other tasks for that person. So I think that's one of the reasons we ended up losing them. We had recruited that person from Anchorage and lost them recently.
So Joe, I just want to be 100% clear. So what you're saying, as of today, we do not have any services coming into June for ophthalmology.
I'd have to follow up. I know Sarah was actively working on it.
Through the chair,
Yes.
they had a clinic last week for 2 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they come once a month.
So is there any plans on coming for October clinic?
I am not 100% sure. I believe they had a clinic scheduled already for October. I am not sure about November.
So we could get a report on that in our October.
Yes.
Well, I think what we could do is once we find out, just to the board if that's appropriate.
And then we did get, like Hal said, we did have that one correspondence and, if someone can respond to that, yeah, we'll get, can do that.
Can get back to you.
Thanks for thanking them for that. I wanted to make sure I had information before I got back to you.
I have one more item.
Go ahead.
This is my last board meeting as the interim CEO, so in my letter to the board, I went through the process of which went through and selecting a new CEO and some of the important aspects that you felt attributes this person should have in terms of continuity, financial acumen, commitment, and collaboration. I've also been asked by Kenny, which we'll be meeting here shortly, to what's their transition plan. It's something that I've promised to do, and we worked on that. I'm also here all the way through next week. I have a couple of follow-up meetings that I have to do now. It's related to specific processes, but I wanted just to read this to you. It's easier for me to try and remember it, but it's been an honor and a privilege to serve our regional hospital medical staff, the staff, and the community of CDJ. Together, we've made significant progress in improving the organization's sustainability. We could not have achieved this progress without the advice and counsel of the board of CDJ. We are working together as a team. I am grateful to all that helped me over the past year. That said, we all know that difficult choices were made. It's my hope that the organization can move forward in a positive direction that includes healing, changes made, strategic growth of hospital services, and learning to compete in a more complex healthcare environment during these times with grace and kindness going on. Those are my parting words to you, but I did want to say how much I appreciated the advice and counsel of Kenny, the wonderful board chair, during some very difficult times, as well as Deb. Deb, you hear that? They're wonderful, and then you all have been very gracious, and I really appreciate it. It's been a wonderful year for me, and that makes really good friends. And
I raised my hand to talk, and I know they probably won't answer me, but I was in.
Anyways, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Friday in the doc.
Mr. Chair, Kenny?
Yes, Dr. Jones.
I just want to be clear, when, I think everyone needs to know, when is Joe going to be assuming the role of a CEO? What day is that specifically?
That is Sunday at 12:01 a.m.
So this Sunday at 12:01.
Sunday at 12:01.
Thank you.
And my responsibilities end at 12.
And Ian and I will be meeting tomorrow to just go over the final transition plan, and I'm sure we'll get a letter out to the board too, so they'll be able to see how everything will be transitioned over there. Ian also will be available too, because he has agreed to stay on, and we're working with that as well.
I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the members of my team, Kim, the COO, Joe, our CFO and soon to be CEO, Chad Brown, who's our HR guy. We have Gail Moorhead, who's Chief Quality, Chief Compliance, Chief of everything else, right? Nate Rumsey and a few other individuals. Chris over there, sorry, Chris. Aaron, who's also reporting to me, being very good at helping me navigate. So it's been a wonderful team. You have good bones here and you have a good team. They really try hard. So it's been a pleasure and an honor to work with them too. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. It's been a pleasure working with you. You know how I feel about that. Okay, let's just move forward and Chad is gonna give us a organizational design update.
Thanks, Kenny. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you, Chad.
I appreciate it. Hey, just for the record, iPad here is at 34%, so we're gonna hang in there as long as we can. Organizational design update. So I've been working with Ian as he wraps up his tenure with us, as well as Joe. We've got some final changes we're looking at making and getting that communication plan rolled out. So, but before we can do any of that, we're gonna come back to you guys next month, Joe. Yeah, next month with the actual plan. So you guys stay tuned. It's almost ready for the big reveal.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Chad? Nope. All right, move on to med staff report. Dr. Rosenfeld filling in for the.
Med staff was business as usual for us. Only update is we're hopefully going to hear from the lawyers about the bylaws. It's been tied up with them for a couple months. We're now on month 6. So hopefully we will get that going.
By the month.
Yes, we're looking forward to that. And beyond that, I just wanted to thank Mr. Warden on behalf of the med staff. This has been a tough year, but I think he's been very transparent, collaborative, and we've had very good support from him and his staff. So we just wanted to thank him for all of his hard work this year.
Thank you, Dr. Rosenfeld. Also, I just want to say congratulations to you. I don't know if I can say that out in public, but Dr. Rosenfeld and his wife, Dr. Rosenfeld, are going to be first-time parents.
Dating that, oh no.
I know.
Super excited for both of them. It's great. Committee updates. Deb, I don't know if you want to pop in here or Hal, you want to give Deb's update on just planning what we talked about. It's a very quick planning meeting. I can go through with it. So we talked mostly a lot about the ED expansion. We approved what said from the city. We just basically kind of talked about where we are at. Nothing major happened into the planning meeting. The minutes pretty much reflect what would happen. So if anybody has any questions about that, I will do my best to answer it along with Hal. Oh, and Dr. Raster too. He was in.
I was there, yeah. We didn't get some funding we thought we might get, so that's a little bit of a hardship, but we're going to reapply for more funding, but the process is moving forward, is what I recall.
Financial committee, again, our finance chair is not here. Deb's unable to punch in and speak on this, so I believe the minutes accurately reflect finances. Joe is online here to answer any questions if there's any questions concerning the finance packet. Great, thank you very much. Ian, you read your letter already to us, but go ahead, Ian, with your.
Well, I just wanted to make sure, and what I've tried to do is be as transparent with the decision. So if you read the letters, you absolutely know kind of the thinking, the direction we're going. So I wanted to make sure that as best as I could recount some of the important aspects of selection of the CEO that were factors in choosing. That was continuity, financial acumen, commitment, and then collaboration. So that's something that I think each of the board members, given the circumstances we found ourselves over the last number of years, felt very important. And as I discussed with Gil Murray today, number 20 is coming. Right? As you know, my first day here, I was number 19. The CEOs.
My bosses.
My bosses, yeah.
That's.
So anyways. So I just wanted to make sure that people had an opportunity to read that. As Kenny already mentioned, we're working on a transition plan so that There are a number of things that I was not able to finish. And some of those things need carried on by Joe. Some of them are related to strategies, some are related to growth, some of them are related to, you know, what should Title 40 look like that would help us, you know, things of that nature. So I'm trying to get a list up of all those things, as well as turn my files over, you know, to him, and so that everything that we've done is documented. All my decisions are documented. They're in CEO decision file signed, so that as he comes over, he can go back and reflect on what we did. And when he gets questions to the board, he can basically say, this is what he did. This is the reasons why. Maybe the circumstances are different to change, but I didn't have that benefit. And I hope that this will be helpful to him and to the board. And then, as Kenny said, you know, I'm not going to be that visible, but I'll be present for all issues. I'm just we'll be sorting out what my next set of responsibilities will be to help in this transition. That the proof is useful. And then on a personal note, my 46th wedding anniversary is coming up, and I'm headed to Wisconsin for that. My wife and I met in Wisconsin. We were first married in Wisconsin. Two of my kids went to school in Wisconsin. My older son and his wife were married in Wisconsin, so we're going back there. One of the problems that my year absence has caused in my family, not to be too open and transparent, but my wife is concerned that all the training she's put into me has now been ruined. That I've gotten bad habits.
Withered out.
So I will be going through a mentoring and training program. And as you know, physical therapists don't take no for an answer. So anyways, but just on a personal note, I will be doing here in October.
Interesting. Speaking of Commissioner Gordon picking up the backbone, forget my 60s illusion, but Joe will be able to call you. What's the time frame? I didn't hear you mention.
Anytime he wants, 24/7, 365.
4 months. What's the month? So
Well,
3 months, 6 months.
It's really up to Kenny and Joe. You know, we had originally thought I would go through December 31st, but I didn't want to charge the entity 2 CEO salaries. That's not good. So we probably have to enter into some sort of consulting agreement that would be much cheaper for the organization, and Joe needs to use that money to replace him, CFO, as quickly as possible. So I didn't want to take advantage of the organization and just go on an as-needed basis for flexibility.
So I'm hoping that the way that I was directed from the board was to have Ian on here till at least the end of the year. And we're going to be working on possibly him doing some sort of counseling or helping of us. That's what I think the board has instructed me to do. So I will be working on that with that. But, again, too, I think it's so important that during this transition period, again, to another CEO, that we have as much continuity as possible. So I'm going to do my damnedest to make sure that that's what happens.
Yeah, and I'm committed to helping.
Help that eases your mind a little bit. Anything else? And again, thank you for all you've done for us. Kim Stout, are you on here? But Kim is not here to give her her hospice wildfire court report. Will Kim McDowell be doing that, or are we going to hold that to the next meeting?
Through the chair, we'll hold that to the next meeting. The information's in the packet, and then I did update on the census earlier, and I'm happy to try to answer any questions or take them back to her.
Okay. Do we have any questions? Hal?
Yeah, I saw in some kind of newsletter that Dr. Dunn is now the medical director of hospice, which I think to be a good thing. When I first met him, it was at a hospice related thing in the early oddies. And I know he was Dr. Yatta's designated successor at Catholic Community Services. But we haven't really heard anything about why that was or what Quigley's role is going to be, or if he's still in town. Is there anything more to say about changing the medical director of hospice?
Through the chair.
Yes.
So I think that happened because they were trying to, there was different competing kind of situations on the side, like with Dr. Peterson and others. And then when they approached Dr. Dunn, initially he didn't want to do that when the program was first coming on, and now he is willing to do that. So I think that would give us a more streamlined person to go to for home care and hospice for that medical directorship.
So what is Dr. Peterson's role, if any, with hospice now?
I'll have to follow up on that. I think he's still providing some backup services if Dr. Dunn goes out of town or is unavailable.
I have a meeting with him, Dr. Peterson, in the next couple of weeks, so I'll find out from this as well. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay. So Emily is out of town today. She wrote us a letter saying that she will not have a legal update. We will move right on to our foundation chair, our deputy director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the fundraising, and I'm sorry, the report is not in the packet, but it's a short one. On the fundraising aspect, we received a $5,000 grant for Grow Your Own program, and that's going to be applied to the LPN prerequisites to satisfy that for those individuals that are entering the LPN program. So we're very, very happy about that. And that is going to be awarded sometime in October. That's to come in support of that one program. And the last thing I'm going to say is that I have submitted my notice, foundation, and my last day would be October 29th. And it's been a pleasure to work for 10.5 years, this group, and work with this body and in support of the hospital. It's going to, it's a hard thing, but it'll be okay. The foundation is actively looking for a follow executive director, so more to come on that. This is our last board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie. I've been a part of your board for 8 years now.
Yeah, and you're up for re-election. Or reappointment, so thank you for your next 3-year commitment.
Any questions for Maria?
I had just 2 items before we went into executive session.
Got a couple more reports. You want to do it now?
No, go ahead.
We'll wait till we do the board comments. Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I was very interested in the conversation about ophthalmology. The Assembly has been receiving the same communication from those residents. And there is an interest on the Assembly to seeing that ophthalmology at least has some level of place here. So maybe including that on your Thursday meeting when you are meeting with that group, you're going to have the right spectrum of minds in their discussion, stuff like that. I didn't have any real direct reports. The one thing that I did want to say though is, forgive me again, on the Assembly, sometimes I am the lone man out. And I discovered during the pandemic that when we're in the board meeting, that's when we have the debate. That's when we have the polar opinions come out. That's when we hash things out, so we can debate even individual words in an ordinance, which is something that definitely happened. But once we made the decision, especially during the pandemic, and as I was a radio personality communicating this information to the community, communicating the assembly's direction as a united front to the community gave the best direction and the best confidence in the community for the assembly. Hey, this is what they're doing. We might not all agree. And during the pandemic, nobody agreed on stuff, but we moved together in unity, and that gave the community strength and security. Bartlett has had a choppy couple of years with the pandemic and the same issues that you guys face, we face, and but having a board that has the debate in here, has the discussion in here, and then sends a united message forward to the community and says, this is what your community hospital is doing, is going to provide better results for the hospital and the community every single time. And so as this might be my last board meeting as we go through a reorganization, so what are we gonna do next month? I wanted to get that out there because I have a lot of respect for this board. You guys have been really impressed me over the years, and I've learned as much going to these board meetings as I have in any other meeting. You guys have really opened my eyes to a different perspective of the community, and it's been great. But that would be like the last tidbit of advice that I would give to really move forward as a strong board, having that united front. Whatever you decide in here, every board member brings that message forward because that's the decision that the board made. And it's just going to be better for the board, the community, and the hospital. And I just want to thank everybody. And then who knows, maybe I am back here as the liaison for next time. So I thank you all. That's my time, Chair.
Anybody have any questions? Thank you for your counsel this last year and for stepping in and being our liaison. I really appreciate it. And hopefully you'll be here next year. So time for my report, and unfortunately, this is not my last meeting. I will plan on being here for a while longer. I appreciate these tough conversations that we've had this last month. It's been trying. It's going to be trying for this community. We knew it was going to be trying as we navigated these bumpy patches here. This board worked really hard to get to a conclusion and finding a new CEO this month. I'm excited that we're able to do that. I'm really excited about, that we're still moving forward on strategic planning, and our goals are set forth for us. We're going to have patches where there's going to be troubled and rough water, but I really think that we can get through this together as a board, united. So I appreciate everybody. I appreciate all the committee members, the many meetings that I went to this week. This month, I was able to go to all of them except for the finance meeting. And we'll continue to do the same next month. So we're gonna, Sharon, if you can pop on the board calendar. Next month, I'm gonna be out of town for the board meeting. So we actually moved the board meeting with you guys' approval last month to Monday. So the board meeting will be Monday, and I will be here for that board meeting. That will be officially Joe's first board meeting as president. So looks like I got a very light committee calendar. So if we're going to add something out of the calendar, why don't we do that? We want to do it offline and send some.
So no, hey, so our board quality meeting got canceled because of joint commission. And so we're a month behind.
Okay.
And so I would wonder if there's any way between the 8th, 9th, 10th, or 11th, we could do one at 3:30 with the rest of the committee members. Or in Gale.
I can do any of those days.
I can do any of those days too, Shelley.
Unfortunately, let's see, 7, 8, 9. I think I'm back to Juneau on the 10th before noon, so I could do the 10th and the 11th.
How about we do the 10th, 3:30?
Okay.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
And could we schedule a compliance meeting for next month sometime?
Sure.
And I don't really have a lot of strong feelings, Gail, but you said you didn't want it the week of the 23rd, is that right?
We could,
21st?
to the chair, we could do that. I do know that, I believe there's a finance committee scheduled on the 17th that's not listed already. Yeah. So we could do it any day on the week of the 23rd.
Or how about the week of the 14th?
Yes, I'm on that committee and I'm here.
What would be your preference?
You do, Dr. Esther, you do have MSQIC on the 16th that morning.
And then surgery is too much on 17, unfortunately. So if we're gonna do that, then 18 at noon, would be okay, noon or 1.
And can Deb put something in the?
So it is a holiday. I don't know if they're.
Oh, yeah.
Alaska Day.
Yeah. That would involve staff. Another day that would work?
How about the 15th? Does that work for you, Dr. Esther? It's a
Um,
Tuesday.
That is unfortunately a very busy day in the office. Sorry. 14th, Monday?
14th of Monday.
I'm good there.
I have. I can't do it late in the afternoon, but I could do it.
I can do it anytime in the morning. Yeah.
And through the chat, can you get any message from Deb? Then that'll work the 14th.
Okay. Good day.
Pick a
14th
time.
works for me.
Want to pick a time?
Fine. It's Columbus Day. That's okay, right?
The 14th?
Yeah.
Yeah, yes. I will not be able to make that.
Is there another time?
No, I just, all those days,
Okay, all right.
but just Monday's nice.
I will schedule a governance meeting in November.
Was there a time for the compliance?
Okay, so we are to board comments and questions. So I'm going to start with Ian.
Yeah, just 3 quick items. I'll turn 2 of these over. First of all, our annual fiscal year audit has begun. It's a full scope audit and it's something that the CFO and controller work with. So the result of that audit, when they're ready, will come up to the finance committee, but really important. I'm so glad that the assembly supported us having full scope. That's a. The second is we have the joint commission. I'd like to turn that over to Gail just to give a brief update.
Thank you. Thank you, Ian. So last week we had our triennial, it's every 3 years, Joint Commission survey. This survey is actually also recognizes us as deemed status for our CMS survey. So they sent 3 surveyors here. So one is an engineer who does our life safety. So that looks at our facility, everything of our building, our fire, systems, our doors, you name it, all of that. We had a nurse who looks at everything in way of patient care, and then we had a behavioral health specialist. So with that survey, there is 1,403 potential elements of standards that they look at. So there's a lot that they do. They were very busy. They were here Tuesday all the way through Friday. So it's a 4-day survey. So they actually gave us a lot of good things that they said about our hospital. Some of the highlighted areas that they recognized, our OB department. They said that the OB department, that the care that they saw by the nursing staff there, the teamwork, the projects that they did, they gave a lot of great recognition for the nursing staff in our OB department. Our surgical services department, since I've been involved with our Joint Commission surveys as an escort or working on it in my role now for the last 15 years, that is actually the one area that I have never seen such a clean survey. It was amazing, the recognition that they gave to our surgical services area. So I really want to give them kudos. The other thing, our lead surveyor at the very end of the survey, she wanted to recognize all the staff. She says when she goes into a organization, the one thing she asks every staff member individually, she says, in your department, what do you do to keep patients safe? And she says a lot of times when she walks into an organization, people do not know how to answer her. And she said in our organization, she's like every single person that she met immediately could give her an answer and start giving her multiple answers. So she wanted to really recognize the staff in our hospital, that they felt that they had multiple ways of in their roles, you know, this is our frontline staff, could really explain how they kept patients safe. So that's one thing that made me really feel proud of the staff that we have giving patient care in our hospital. So like any good survey, they should find things that we can dig up and find and do better, because you're never going to have 100% on the test. So out of those 1,403 potential areas, we have 40 small things to fix, to clean up. Some of those were very minor, like we didn't have a log, you know, on a temperature or minor things like that. So I'm very, very pleased. It was an excellent survey. We came away really with a great survey that we have minor things to actually look at. So I'm really pleased with it, and I think our teams did excellent. The one thing that the surveyor said, that she did not see any areas that made her pause. All of the things were slight things across the entire organization. So there, on any given day, you always have, you know, something that you may not have signed an order off properly or dated something off. And you're always going to find something if you would look at enough records and that you find things. But it was an excellent Joint Commission survey, and I'm really pleased of the care of the staff. She gave a lot of great kudos to the medical staff for the really well done histories and physicals. Our emergency room, she found 0 sightings over there, Dr. Rosenfeld. So
He's never gonna be able to walk through the.
I know, we know. So they had a great time, and this was and the other thing is, the surveyor was here 3 years ago. So she knew our organization, and she came back and resurveyed us. So she knew about us. So it wasn't her first time coming through. So thank you for letting me brag on our staff for a little bit.
I would only add, I went to the exit conference that they always give, and she was very positive about what we've done. And she was also positive about the A3 process and how well that helped to organize it. And then I'd also like to say, getting ready for a survey is very tough work. And Gail and her main person, Rhonda, did an excellent job, so we want to thank you.
Yeah. And I have to say, the other thing that she recognized the difficulties our organization is going through. And we were transparent about, because they sent a behavioral health surveyor 4 days or, before closing Rainforest. And they knew that, and she had to go through the process of surveying, and she understood the difficulty of what we've gone through this year. And they talked about a lot of times when they're going into an organization, going through the difficulties of what we've been through this year. And she said, by talking to the staff, you would not have recognized that when you speak with staff, because the staff showed a very positive outlook, and you couldn't tell that when they're dealing with patients and providing care. Just like the culture, they are still focused on providing best care for patients. So that really says something to our staff.
The final item really is, we've all agreed that it's been a tough year, but during this year, there's a lot of wonderful things that are going on. And I think it's important sometimes that the only thing that gets into the collective conscience of the community is what's negative. And so what we wanted to do is celebrate the positive. So a leadership team, along with Aaron, started saying maybe we ought to have a report to the community, all the things that we've done, all the things we've added. And so I handed that over to someone who's by far more creative than I, and I'm gonna hand it over for her to kind of talk about what she's doing and when the results would come. I read it over Saturday or Sunday and was just absolutely delighted with what she's done.
Yeah, thank you, Ian, for the record, Aaron Harding. I put a brief blurb in his report, but we're going to be very excited, hopefully right around the holiday season, end of November, to have a print report that will go out to every registered mailbox in Juneau. It's a lovely bifold color report to the community. We'll provide an online version as well, but really highlights some key accomplishments, reinvestments in areas of growth that the hospital has achieved, along with some really good, I think, numbers that highlight the strength of the organization, the diversity, what we bring to the local economy, as well as featuring our foundation as well. So it's a chance to give the community a snapshot and cover, half a dozen areas or so that we really want to brag about our staff and the amazing work that we do. So I've got a draft in progress, and it'll be to the printers the first week of November. So happy to share that with the board.
Give you the opportunity to take a look at it. But I think it's really something that we need to do, is if we don't do it, who is? And I think there's a lot, good bones, good clinicians, good staff. We gotta give them a reason to be proud of what we do and what they do. And sometimes they don't know, and the community doesn't know.
Thank you, Ian. Board comments, questions? And then we will take a quick break, and then we'll get into executive session. All right, guys, here we go. Lisa?
All right. I move the Board of Directors of Bartlett Regional Hospital recess into executive session to discuss several matters. Those which by law, municipal charter, or ordinance are required to be confidential or involve consideration of records that are not subject to public disclosure, specifically the credentialing report, medical staff meetings, minutes, patient safety dashboard, and union negotiations, and to discuss possible BRH litigation, specifically a candid discussion of facts and litigation strategies with BRH and the city attorney. Okay. I'll read that last line.
Thank you. And right now we are having Sharon move people into the waiting room.
Okay, recording started.
Sharon, what in the waiting room?
No one waiting room.
Okay, we are officially out of executive session.
Yes, I want to note that we accepted the convention report and we gave direction to staff as far as the union negotiation.
Any questions about that? Seeing no questions, we have come to the end of tonight's agenda. Again, Mr. Warden, thank you so much for your leadership during the last year. We appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you around campus. With that, we are adjourned, everybody. Thank you.